I'm Stephanie Woodard, a secondary teacher development specialist for Houston ISD. Today I'll be modeling the Do I Really Get It literacy routine in a reading classroom. The Do I Really Get It routine is a routine that helps teachers plan formative assessments and checks for student understanding throughout the lesson cycle. In the Do I Really Get It routine, we regularly predict student confusion and plan questions, check understanding of instructions, use response signals, monitor students closely and address confusion, provide think time and talk time before cold calling, and extend superficial responses. All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I want you to first read this quote that I have here and then respond in a couple of sentences to the two questions. Now, here's the quote. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. So respond. There's two questions. What two things did Shakespeare compare in this quote? And then how are those two things alike? When I give an assignment or ask a question, I like to circulate the room to get a really good understanding of what the students are doing. First, I like to check to make sure that they understand the task that's been given, and then I like to make sure that they really grasp the concept. So what is he comparing to? That's exactly what I'm looking for, but can you explain that a little bit? In this particular case, I knew that Robert may have had some confusion because he only wrote one or two words for a two-part question. So I had to pause for a moment to get an extension of what he really knew. I want you to give me a thumbs up if you feel like poems always mean exactly what they say. I want you to give me a thumbs down if you think sometimes poems mean different things than what's in the text. So using whole class response signals is a great way for me to quickly assess students and their knowledge and understanding of a specific concept. I planned this question in advance because I knew that the answer to the question provided understanding of a foundational big idea that the students would need to know in order to grasp the concept of this particular lesson. We're going to use TPCAST today, and our big idea is understanding extended metaphors. Now, as we do that, I want you to follow along with me with the notes that we're going to take today. So I want you to think for a moment as you look at those two options. Which one of those would be an example of an extended metaphor? When you think you have your response, pick up the response card at your desk, but don't hold it up yet. I want you to just think about whether or not you select A or B. Which one of those is an example of an extended metaphor? Anytime there are multiple answers to a question, I like to give students the opportunity to respond using response cards. Have your card in hand? Be prepared to show it in 1, 2, 3. Show me your cards. I see the majority of us have A. I see a few B's. Someone who has an A. In this lesson, after I gave the signal and students showed their cards, I cold called on a student who showed the letter A so that they could justify their response. In that way, I'm able to check for their understanding while also giving the students who chose the letter B a chance to hear why the letter A was correct. And I want to focus on one specific thing, which is the paraphrase. So take a moment to discuss with the members of your group, what does it mean to paraphrase? And I want you to be prepared to have at least one person share out. When I plan, I try to anticipate students' misunderstandings so that I can emphasize those things during the lesson and avoid as much confusion as possible. Okay, so make sure you have a clear understanding of what summary is, what paraphrasing is. In this particular case, I knew that paraphrasing and summarizing were two concepts that students often have a hard time with. After I circulated the room and allowed them time to respond, I cold called on students to get a definition based on what they had discussed. So let me have one of you, either Danavan or Ephraim, to share out what does it mean to paraphrase something?
Paraphrase means in your own words, say it like what exactly happened in the poem.
But what's the difference between a summary and paraphrase? Kimberlyn, what's the difference?
Sometimes in a summary you can write a paragraph or longer, and paraphrase. It doesn't really have to be that long.
After cold calling, I noticed that several of the students had a very shallow understanding and a very shallow definition of what the questions were. And so I referred back to one of the responses that I heard Jasmine give as I was monitoring the conversations, and I asked her if she would share that response with the class. Over here, I heard a really good description of the difference between the two. So Jasmine, would you share with us what I heard you say earlier?
Summarizing is the overview of the paragraph, and paraphrasing is exactly in your own words.
I like that very much. In sharing her response, I was able to make sure the students heard a very clear definition of the words and that they were able to internalize that before we moved on into the next part of the lesson. The next poem that you're going to look at contains another extended metaphor. You're going to use chart paper to recreate the TP Cash chart like the one that we have here. So, Frederick, can you tell me, what are we about to do now?
We're going to be working in a group using the TP Cash chart so we can get a better understanding how to do it.
Yes, you will. Checking for understanding is not limited to the content. I asked Frederick to do a teach back to clarify the group work instructions before everyone began work. As I monitor group work, I circulate the room to look and listen for cues that students understand the task. I also take the opportunity to ask probing questions for students who may have a misunderstanding or need to extend an answer. During this time, I also check back with students like Robert who may need additional support with the content or task. I make note of students who may later need reteaching or interventions with the content that we're working on. So what could she be saying, or the essential message that she's giving us? I'll go ahead and put up the sentence stems for you to respond to for your exit ticket, and you'll just stick them on the door on your way out. When planning a lesson, I generate both content and concept questions that I can ask students from the do now to the exit ticket to ensure that their understanding of the objective is concrete. Once I take a look at students' exit tickets, I'm able to adjust the lesson to address any misunderstandings or to build on enduring understandings as we move on to the next concept. That way, I make sure that I've checked for understanding before going too far down the road.